Hello and welcome to the mixtapes. I'm your co-host Amber, joined by my lovely co-host Nikki. Hi, Nikki.
Hi, Amber.
So, how are you? Tell me something good.
I'm doing well. My something good is in honor of our first broadcasted visual episode. I'm going to show you my flowers that I recently got from Sam's Club. I've made a tradition of every 2 weeks when I go to Sam's Club and I get my, whatever it is I need for my house. I also pick up some flowers. So this bouquet is like kind of fun. It's got like different ones going on, some
Pretty, yeah.
yellow, some purple, some white. And then I always put some of them in a vase on my altar. But so yeah, that's my
Love
something good. I'm
that.
just looking at them and I'm thinking about spring and the energy that that brings, and I'm so excited about that. So, what is your something good?
My something good is that I'm pretty proud of. I'm feeling pretty proud of myself today. We've been working on just like bringing it back to life, and so I hauled. I want to say like over 20 bags of rubber mulch from our garage to our backyard by myself, like hauled them all the way, unloaded them, emptied them out. I'm like really proud of myself because that was at least 100 pounds of lifting and walking back and forth. And I don't know, it feels really good when I do something that like I wouldn't normally do.
Yeah.
Last year I helped him like hang up a fence. So I'm just like doing all these things that like are I've never been taught or like out of my comfort zone,
Mhm.
but I love them. And I'm like, let's do more because we have to get more bags. And I'm like ready to do some
You're like
more.
ready.
I think it makes me feel like this really overwhelming sense of accomplishment. I can do things that feel good. When I move my body, it doesn't have to be like a strict like I can do yard work. I can do things that really feel good and move my body. So that's my something good.
Oh, I love that. It's giving bodybuilder. It's giving bodybuilder. And I love that like mind body spirit connection too to like outside. Like you're outside and like you're building something that you're going to be able to see the results of, and like your kids will enjoy from what I saw. That's what you guys are doing. But
It's we put these rubber mulch around their play area because it's just
Mhm.
like dirt right now. So the kids can enjoy it. We can enjoy it because we like looking at it.
Mhm.
Like it's our
It's
house. We're
beautiful.
investing in it. Yeah.
Yes. Oh my God, I love it. I love that. That's so awesome. You're so strong.
Thank you. Thank you. Right. Well, we have like a lot of topics today that we've kind of just outlined that we wanted to talk about. And so this is just another one of those, episodes where it goes where it takes us. So we'll just get it started. Let's see. So I would say that the first topic that like came up for us is code switching in different
Mhm.
spaces. How does that experience work for you? Like, what is your experience with code switching?
Yeah, I love that question and such an important topic. I feel like it could be helpful if we start with a common definition. So I'm actually just
Yeah,
going to see right now what dictionary.com identifies code switching as, just so that
okay,
everyone
absolutely.
has a common definition. All right, so according to Britannica, that's a good source. Yeah, we can
Yeah.
do Britannica. Code switching is the process of shifting from one linguistic code, a language or a dialect, to another depending on the social context or conversational setting. Sociolinguists, social psychologists, and identity researchers are interested in the ways in which code switching, particularly by members of minority ethnic groups, is used to shape and maintain a sense of identity and a sense of belonging to. Something that always drives me crazy, and I just have to say this because I just read this definition, is when they refer to us as minorities, because we're the global majority. I just had to say that.
Yes.
That just bothered me actually. But but now we have our common definition. And yeah, how does it
Yes.
show up for me? I actually remember vividly when I learned about it. And that was in my junior year of college, actually, senior year of college. I took a linguistics 101 class as like a science credit. And we learned about African American Vernacular English, AAVE. And I didn't like have that kind of like terminology or words to describe what that was. And I was like, oh, that's what it is. And that's like, why culturally, like sometimes Black people talk differently or whatever than what I was used to, right, as a Latina. And it made so much sense to me. And then in the like lesson, she also talked about code switching, and I was like, wait, I do this a lot. Like, so it's definitely remains true for me. I think that I will oftentimes try to like put on my white lady voice a lot, especially at work, or I feel like I do it a little bit less now that I'm working in DEI. But when I used to work in like an office setting, I would definitely put it on, especially when I was answering phones and just being really conscious of like my tone. I think that not necessarily the words I say, but my tone is what's come up a lot when people have a problem with me is like, I don't like her tone, or I don't like the way she said that, or like that seems kind of aggressive. I think like that's where I see it more so, less with the words I'm using, but more so like my tone, which I feel feeds into the fiery Latina stereotype. So that's kind of how I've experienced it. How about you?
When I went to school, so like maybe middle school, is when it would come up like not only would like my like white peers, but also like my black peers would be like, "Oh, you talk like a white girl."
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, "But I'm just enunciating my words and like,
Mm-hmm.
speaking clearly, and I like to interject vocabulary words that I've learned because I read a lot, so I don't it was always felt insulting to me for people to say, "Oh, you sound like a white girl,"
Yeah.
when I just was it made it feel like, "Oh, you sound educated or you talk so clearly that you must want to be like, a white person." And that was not it at all. It was more so like I just wanted to make sure that I was speaking clearly so that people could understand what I was
Right.
saying. Um, and
Hmm.
eventually, like when I went to college or when I would be around my friends, I realized like, oh, I am switching up the way that I'm talking around like friends in a more like casual setting. And I would not talk like that, at a work setting or, in a school setting. So I noticed that I was doing that, like more laid back, casual kind of
Hmm.
conversations. And maybe it did fall under AAVE when I was like around family and friends that looked like me versus because I was always in like predominantly white spaces.
Yeah.
So I thought I was just talking like, not necessarily more educated, but just I'm from Colorado. It was around me,
You were talking like
Um,
the people you were around.
I was
Yeah.
talking like the people I was around. And I had interests like the people that I was around, but that didn't mean that I didn't know who I was. And I always felt insulted when people would point that out, like, "Oh, you like corn or Limp Biscuit, so you must be whitewashed or like Oreo." And I was like, "Well, no, I know I'm black, but I can still like these things because
Right.
I'm living in suburbia and this is what we like right now." And I didn't want that to classify me because I also was very aware of like my culture, and the music that my culture listens to and like food and like when I went home it was like I knew who I was.
Yeah.
So it felt insulting, and it was insulting when it was from both black and white peers
Hmm.
because I was like, what, am I not fitting in anywhere? Like, and I have to change the way I talk to fit in. It never felt right. But like you had said something that I thought was interesting. You were like, when you put on like your white lady voice. Um, and I wonder why it is that like we kind of like classify it as that when it's like a professional voice.
Hmm.
Nikki is just speaking professionally versus Nikki is speaking, more laid back and
Yeah.
casual.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, why does our professional voices have to
Hmm.
be white?
I'm so glad you brought that up. There's actually so many light bulbs going on in my head as you were talking, but because I was thinking about, just saw this TikTok that I sent you that was talking about how it was like being a part of being black and being raised in suburbia is the experience of losing a lot of your white friends as you get older and more comfortable in your blackness. So that was like one thing I was thinking of. And then another thing that came up was like, not all black people use AAVE. Like, so, it's unfair to like put you in any sort of category based on how you speak. And then the other thing is about the professionalism piece is that was like drilled into my brain, kind of like your mom, but in it almost for us, it was always more of like an appearance thing. Like by like my mom, all of my aunties, my grandma, everybody was like, when you go to a job interview, you need to straighten your hair, put it up. You need to wear a suit. I was pulling up to like like grocery store ShopRite interview in a blazer. And I was 16. It's just so funny because now that I work with kids, I find myself sometimes giving them the same advice and then I have to catch it because I'm like, am I being a little bit much? Because, when I worked at Athleta or clothing stores and we would have teenagers come in for job interviews, we weren't judging them for not wearing a blazer. I never had that comfortability. I was showing up in a blazer at 16 trying to get the job to be a cashier at the grocery store, right? And
Right.
so they never said explicitly it was because we should be white, but it was very clear, like this is how you're supposed to act. And
Right.
so it's interesting because you're right. Like we see professionalism as white. So, and I'm curious for you, do you feel like you notice any of that within your kids kind of growing up in a suburban area?
I haven't noticed it yet. Actually, I wouldn't even say like currently we live in a suburban area. Not as like suburbia as like where I grew up.
Mm-hmm.
And so my oldest is like around like all kinds of like kids. So like lately he's been coming home saying he's 5. He's been saying like, "Hey yo,"
Oh, I love
and I'm like,
that.
"Oh, where'd you learn that?" And he's like a friend in class, but like I don't know. I guess maybe once he gets older, I'll have to see like how he feels he needs to navigate that. But as far as for like my teenager, who's 17, I would definitely say that there is a difference in that they are aware of the code switching. The need to code switch.
Mhm.
Sometimes like when, family comes to town versus like my husband's side or like my side of the family, there will be like a difference in how she interacts. Like maybe she's, especially when we were all like, getting along and hanging out a lot, it's like a lot of joking and like, pointing out like different physical features. When
Mhm.
it's like my side of the family, like we're kind of like roasting each other. And
Mhm.
then when she's been around like my husband's side of the family, she's more like, oh, I am gonna sit here and say, haha, that is so funny, interesting, and I'm like, even I will catch myself looking at my, teenager like, who are you right now? Like, that is interesting. And nobody has told her that she needed to do this. It's just something that, like, I feel like that was just the vibe she was getting. Like, oh, maybe I should be
Mhm.
more like thoughtful, and like maybe
Mhm.
it's because it's like guest versus like she felt like my side of the family is family.
Mhm.
Obviously, we were teenagers once upon a time. When you talk to your friends, it's totally different than when you talk to like your parents or other adults.
Yeah.
So that is code switching in itself, right? I know
Mhm.
that like it is more specific to like, people of color and how they like kind of like assimilate and
Mhm.
fit into certain situations. But it is interesting to see like how it also shows up when like it's company and more specifically like when the company is not people of color.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. It's interesting that you brought that up because something that came to mind is I went to a session at POCC on code switching, and it was talking about the differences between code switching in the Black community, the Latina community, and the Asian community. And there's like one stark difference that stood out to me is in the Black community, it's like kind of frowned upon to code switch in some ways, meaning like you can get shit for it, like you just said, like stop trying to be white, etc. But in the Latina community, it's like a celebration. Like if we could pass, then it's like good job. Like it's like encouraged to um, code switch, but also like I think that's also why so many people of Latina origin are in interracial relationships, especially with white people, because it's that like way to get into the white world. You know what I mean? But it is interesting. I wonder if your daughter is. I mean, I think it could be a mixture of both. Like potentially, it is just that she isn't as comfortable with your husband's side of the family as she is with yours, and that makes sense. And then it could also be that because it's they're white, or it could be both. I don't know. But
yeah,
it's valid either way.
yeah, I don't know. I think maybe I would have to ask some more questions, but or maybe she's in a lot of what our children do are based on what they see their parents do. So
Yeah.
maybe she's seen me code switch in that capacity. Or even like, how do I talk to my friends versus how do I talk in a professional setting? So
Hmm.
like I if anything, it's come from me.
Yeah. I mean, that's again entirely possible. I have a crazy code switching story that it's like almost, again, I love doing this podcast because light bulbs go off a lot
Yeah.
and it's almost like therapy. I mean, hey, but do you want to hear it? It's a
Of
crazy story.
course, of
It's
course.
so cringy. I'm going to be physically cringing while I tell it because looking
It's
back,
all good.
I want to hide looking back. Okay. So me and my sister, we were having a big party for our high school graduation. We have two uncles who are DJs and they have like a really big like DJ business and they go all
Yeah.
out. Like it's really silly. Like they have like the booth, they have the props, maracas, like all that, like they bring out the big Dominican instruments and the drums and it's a whole fiesta. And they're
Yeah.
really good. They're really good. Shout out to them. But so they usually when we have like big family events, they'll come and they'll be the DJs. It makes sense, right? My sister and I went to a very predominantly white school in right outside of Albany in the suburbs. And all of our friends pretty much were white. I think we had like one Asian friend and like one black friend, and that was it. Like everyone else was white, right? So when my parents were planning this party for us, it was gonna be at the park, and it was like, so all of the things like to be considered is that it's in public. It was at a park under like a pavilion, right? So there's no
Yeah.
hiding. There's no privacy. Two is we have a bunch of white people coming. And three is that my sister and I were very much in our like Mumford and Sons era, which is so funny because people are making fun of that on TikTok, and I love it because it was so true. And like we were like that, like the mustache era. You know exactly what I'm talking about. So we were in that like hipster Tumblr phase. So those are the factors, okay? And the first thing we said when our parents were like, "We're gonna throw you guys this party," we were like, "No DJ." And they were like, why? Why wouldn't you want a DJ at the party? And we were like, because we don't want any Spanish music. Can they come and do no Spanish music? And my parents were like, I mean, yeah, like I guess. Like they didn't
Yes.
get it. Like they thought we were being so weird. And Jessica and I, my sister, we were both being like, we like threw a fit over it. We were being ridiculous. Like we were like panicking because we were like, what if they come to the party anyway and they play music like they don't listen to our playlist and then everyone's gonna find out and discover that we're brown. Like it's like we didn't say that exactly, but we were
Yeah.
like mortified at the thought of our uncles coming and doing this DJ setup at our graduation party. Like we really made it a big deal. And
Aw.
so I remember our parents like promising us like, we're going to do it. You're not even going to have a good party if you don't have a DJ. Like, we're going to do this thing and we're bringing the DJs whether or not you like it, but just suggest your music, which I think is a reasonable,
Yeah.
it makes sense. And I get their point. They were like, we have this free service that can
Right.
elevate your party. Why would we not do it? Like, I get it. Right. So the party was pretty fun, but I just remember so first of all, there was like a dance floor and like no one was dancing. And then like whenever they would put on, I remember like we had like our little playlist going with like our stupid fucking like Lumineers bullshit playing.
Yeah.
And and with like a mixture of Fetty Wap because we were also obsessed with Fetty Wap, but whatever. Like no Spanish music in sight, okay? And like halfway through the event, I just remember like my aunties being like, this shit is lame, essentially, is what they said. And they were like requesting all of their Spanish songs. And then the dance floor was just them. It would just be like our family. And like, Jess and I and our friends were like hiding. Like we distance ourselves from the pavilion where they were
Yeah.
having this party. And it's just so funny because looking back, I'm like, damn, like we would have had so much fun if we had incorporated our friends and our white friends and our white family into the
Mhm.
fun. Like, it's like crazy how many things I've been to since. And I love dancing now, like absolutely love dancing, especially to Spanish or Latin music. Like I love it. And so it's like, how lame is that? Like we could have had so much fun dancing with our family, bringing our white friends into it, and they probably would have had a great time. Like
They would have.
they weren't those kind of kids that would have been like, this is weird. Do you know what? It was
Right.
our perception that we thought that they were going to be that way. And it's like, dang, like we missed out on a really good time. And like parents were right. I wish I could relive that moment. And I just like want to pinch myself because what the hell was wrong with me?
I get it. You were centering, a whole nother culture at the time, and
Hmm.
you thought like, oh, if I can continue to like, pass, that was like the forefront of what you were thinking as you were growing up.
Yeah.
So it makes sense that that is what y'all did, and I love that like you can look back and realize, okay, in hindsight, we could have totally embraced this. We could have totally danced with our friends. We could have been really proud of all the music that my uncles were playing, but it's okay because now you do, and it's I think that's what
Yeah.
we live and learn. We live and learn. I think
Yeah.
that like as somebody who is biracial, you kind of had that luxury as you kind of hide and
Hmm.
switch gears is how you wanted to present yourself, and not that is not always the case for all biracial
Yeah.
people, and it's not the case for like
Yeah.
brown and black people. Like I had like a little Discman, that I would
Love
carry
that.
around, and then this like white kid came up to me and he was like, "Ugh, well, you listen to Corn, but you're black," and I was like, "Yeah, I know I am," but it was
Stupid.
like I wasn't allowed
Yeah.
according to him, and he thought I was supposed to be listening to like rap and like hip hop, which I did.
Hmm.
I definitely did, and I don't necessarily feel like I have to prove that,
Hmm.
but I liked all kinds of music because my dad liked all kinds of music, and so I thought that was just something that you did. Like it didn't matter if you were white or black, if you liked country or rock or hip hop, like you just did, like because I appreciated music, but I didn't like ever being classified.
Yeah. It is a luxury. I mean, that's passing. That's what privilege
Yeah,
is. It is a
yeah,
luxury to be able to pass. And there's lots of people who are biracial and multiracial that can't pass, of course.
yeah.
Um, and so it is a luxury to be able to pass for white and to be able to navigate the world as someone who can look white and act white. Absolutely, that's a luxury and a privilege. And you're right. Like you don't have that. You don't benefit from that at all. Like, and there's so many people who have my exact DNA makeup and are darker than me. You know what I mean? It's so much
Mhm.
comes down to how you physically look that it's like, it's
Right.
100% a luxury and a privilege. Absolutely. Yeah.
And it's not like I've ever wanted to hide. I think I
Hmm.
just didn't want to be put in boxes based on
Yeah.
how I was showing up.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, you get one, take a look and look at me, and all of a sudden now I'm in a box.
Hmm.
Um, when it's like there's so much more than me. And then when I went to college, I went to an HBCU, um, and I that was like my first experience being around that many like black people.
Yeah.
Um, and so people don't understand when I say that was a culture shock for me because I'm black, but
No.
I've never been around like that many black people. Like, yes, I went to
Mhm.
family reunions and saw like both of my parents' side of the family, and I did hang out with like grandparents and uncles and cousins and stuff like that. But I didn't grow up around them. We grew up in Colorado. It was just my like family of four.
Yeah.
It was a different shift when I went to college, and people would stop me. Like I would be in the like cafeteria or walking with my friends, and I would be talking, and people would legit stop me and go, "Oh my gosh, like where are you from? Why do you sound like that? Why do you talk like that?" Like would stop me in my tracks and like be
Aw.
in my face, like, "Where are you? Who are you? What are you? Like, where are you from?" And I would be like, "I'm from Colorado." And they would always ask the same question. "Oh, there's black people in Colorado?" And I would be like very defensive because I'm like, "Well, yeah, there's black people in Colorado," and I, was around a lot of black people in different settings,
Sure.
but they weren't in my neighborhood. And it's like part of me was like, "Yeah, there's black people in Colorado," like defensive, but then it was also like, "But not on my street,"
Right,
my
right,
neighborhood. There was like five of us in high school, so yes, there's black people, but they're just not where I was growing up.
right.
So
Do you feel like that hindered your ability at all to like fit in or to like how did it hurt or did it help your sense of self and your like feelings about being black? Like did it affirm your blackness or did it like I'm just curious how that impacted you.
like as far as for my college experience,
Yeah, like just going to an HBCU.
I think it affirms it more now that I'm like out of the situation. I think when I was in it, it was like not, it wasn't as affirming because of the people that would make the comments and the jokes and say we talk like a white girl. I told you this before. I happened to date like the only white guy in the band, and this is like a HBCU. Like he was legit the
Yeah.
only white guy in the
Some things don't change.
band. And my friends would be like, "Oh, he's blacker than you."
Mm.
Like how he acted. Oh, like you're black and he's white, but he acts blacker than you. That like was harmful
Yeah.
because I was just like, why? Because he talks a certain way, that means that he's blacker than me. So when he opens his mouth, now all of a sudden he's just accepted as blacker than me. It was like really insulting. Um, so that experience was definitely interesting. Um, I would say that racial trauma for sure, but it was also a blessing too because it was a small HBCU, and so the professors that I had truly looked out for us. You
Mm.
know, they cared about us. I felt like if I would have went to like predominantly white institute, I probably would have not had the same care that my professors showed in
Mhm.
like relationships and bonds that I did going to an HBCU. There's so much culture and richness that I learned about in Louisiana, just living there. So I do appreciate parts of that experience for sure. I just when I bring it up, it's like hard for me to be like, oh yeah, that was amazing because there were so many times where it didn't feel amazing. And like black guys would tell me I'm a sellout or like
Mm.
they would call me names and stuff like that
Mhm.
because I was dating him. Um, so I had to deal with that too. Like I always felt like there was like just like this sense of shame looming over me because I was from Colorado or I dated a white guy or I talked a different way and I have like this Colorado accent versus so there was just all these parts that just felt like it was never enough or like I didn't fit in. So yeah, it was just a little sad, but when I look back and like I see like when Southern University opened up the Super Bowl this year, I was really proud. Like, oh yeah, I went to an HBCU. I'm proud of like
Mm.
HBCU experiences. I will proudly wear my Grambling shirt. I can. So
Do you think if you had gone to a bigger HBCU, like Howard, for example, you would have had a better experience? Yeah, I see you shaking your head.
Yeah, I do
Yes.
actually. I because I feel like there would have been more people from all over the
Yeah.
United States. It felt like at least my circle of people were all like either from the South or from
Right.
the Louisiana itself.
No, that makes total sense. Like because it's just when there's such a small population of people, period, they're going to be more similar than if there's
Yeah,
bigger one. So I feel like a theme that's come up quite a bit in the podcast is kind of like your feelings of never and this is something we share in common of like never fully fitting in anywhere, right? Because of the intersections of your identities.
yeah.
I'm sorry though. I my ex was is of Mexican descent and was is from out in Inglewood, California,
Mm-hmm.
and went to an HBCU in. Oh my god! I'm actually glad I'm not remembering this. It's a good sign. Anyway, he went to an HBCU in the South, Alabama,
Okay.
and it was largely because he felt more accepted and included by the Black community
Mm,
than the Hispanic or Latino community in Inglewood. So it's interesting
interesting.
how what brings people to HBCUs. And I remember him saying like he was like, yeah, I stuck out like a sore thumb. I was like, there were two Mexican kids at the whole school, you know. So,
Yeah.
but yeah, wow.
Yeah. It
It's
is
just
what it
it
is.
it hurts a little bit my heart just thinking about the fact though that even in an environment where the goal is to empower Black people, you were still disempowered in some way, or like not saying that they took away your power, but just saying like you still experienced that kind of like
Yeah.
shame around your identity. I'm sorry that
Thank you. Thank you.
it's
I
heavy.
have definitely been moving and working past that. Um, but as far as for like talking about it and being about it, I remember like working at some schools and if like there was like one other like black person or like maybe two, I never felt comfortable like meeting with them, or
Mhm.
I would always feel nervous if we were talking together too long. Like, okay, like
Mhm.
I don't know where that came from, but it was like the looks we would get anytime that we like congregated. Like, I knew that that was a thing growing up in Colorado, like where if it was the black kids and they were together. And
Yeah.
I think that like stuck out to me from high school. And so when I went into like the workforce, I was like, oh, I don't want to be the one sitting with all the like black coworkers.
Mhm.
Not that I didn't want to, but because like I felt like I couldn't. I felt like I would have been judged, or we would have been looked
Yeah.
at like as being suspicious, like we're up to something if we're sitting together in the cafeteria. So I like limited those interactions. And so I feel more comfortable being like, yeah, I'm a black woman. Show
Mhm.
up like this. I've used connect like that. I'm a black mother to connect with other parents. Like, I'm a black mama too. I use that sometimes, and I never would have used that before.
Yeah.
When I was in like predominantly white schools, my school was more comfortable about embracing everybody's
Mhm.
identity versus other schools I've been in.
Yeah. I want to say that, like, when we worked together at the same school, when you were hired, there was an immediate difference in just the way that that division of the school like embraced blackness. Do you know what I mean? Like, it
Mm-hmm.
was really, really visual, and I just want to affirm that to you, and I hope you know that, like, you've impacted your black teachers too, because it's
Yeah,
like it shows them that they can also show up in that way, and it's quite beautiful, and for our babies it's really important. But so thank you for that. And yeah, it's interesting. We had our Black and Brown Affinity space for our staff at the school yesterday, and something that came up is we are going to commit to spending some more time together in like front of the students, because we've noticed that our students are really turned off by the idea of affinity spaces. And one of the reasons why we think that is like they won't communicate with each other. Like, it's so rare that there's multiple black and brown kids in one friend group at my school. It's
yeah,
like they're all spread out into different groups. And it's like I can see it with my eyes, like that awkwardness of like they don't want to engage with each other. They don't want to get close to each other. They don't want to be two black kids together. They want to be one black kid in a white group, one black kid in a white group, and just saying hi to each other in passing. Like, I've
yes,
really noticed that a lot. Um, and kind of like sad. And so we realized, like, because we're just spread out a lot around the school. There's not a lot of us, period, and we don't work a lot together. So we were like, how can we make more of a conscious effort to like sit and like have lunch together, and just so that our kids can see that like there's solidarity within us and that they can have that with each other. Do you know what I mean? And
100%.
it's
I
so
do. Yeah,
important. Yeah. Like, because right now it's just like this awkward, like they don't even want to acknowledge each other. And I'm like, "Bruh," but I get it. Like, I understand why. And like, how do we fix it? I mean, that's such a loaded question, but it's that cycle is still happening in 2025.
I think that just collectively coming together and just being casual with each other and
Hmm.
showing that is going to go so far, because I think that is been the biggest barrier for me, is that the previous schools that I worked at didn't hold space for us to
Hmm.
come together. So it felt uncomfortable to do that and to ask for that. But when you go to a work setting and they're making it clear that they want to honor and value affinity spaces, and they make that a priority, you start to feel safer. You start to feel like more comfortable being able
Yeah.
to connect with your other peers that are people of color as well. And then we can set that example for students.
Hmm.
So I think that the students do need to see that. They do need to
Hmm.
see that it's okay. And you don't have to say it like, look, we're all sitting together.
Right.
Uh,
Right. Yeah.
but
Yeah.
just seeing that the teachers of color, staff of color are like vibing with each other, like I told you. And it's just like, I think when it comes up for like interracial relationships, when I see other black women with somebody outside of their race, I'm like, okay, like I see. But I love black love just as much. But
Right.
when I see or when I can see more interracial couples in a setting, for instance, the school that we would send our kids to, when I see more couples that are like interracial or same sex, like
Hmm.
I feel like, okay, we won't stand out. this feels safe. Like,
Yeah.
I don't know, it just feels there's an energy that just feels so safe.
Something I've seen on social media and totally echoes what you just said is that it's like you're like people are looking at us and it's like we're just like regular people, right? I saw this TikTok today that was like, what stereotypes do you wish that people would give up about Latinos? And someone was talking about like, we just have regular interests. Like some of us like anime, some of us are punk, some of us, you know, paint. Like it's not that every aspect of our identity is being Latino. It's important that we embrace our cultures, but that's not the only part of us. So
Right.
it's like at the end of the day, like I'm just a girl. Like I'm just a woman. I'm a mom. I'm a
Yes.
wife. Like
Just no, you're right though. There's so many parts of my identity, and I am so much more than a black mama
yeah,
or a
yeah,
black woman. I I'm a nerd. I fangirl out to a specific show, and it's an obsession of mine. But I put myself in this category of like this fandom of people who really like The Walking Dead
yeah.
and or zombie stuff. I'm actually into like dystopian type like apocalyptic
Ooh,
shows, and I'm actually rewatching The Walking Dead right now, from the beginning, which I haven't done in a long time, and
love.
I have like so many thoughts. There was this one episode where the main character, Rick, he is a former police officer, and there's a scene where like there's this guy who's like racist, and he's talking saying the N word and just all kinds of stuff. And Rick gets in his face and he's like, "Look, this is the end of the world. There's no more N words. We're not playing these games. Like it's the end of the
Yeah.
world. We got more things to worry about." So you just like I fell in love with that character just for saying
Mhm.
that. And then as the show goes on, he actually falls in love with a black woman, and but the fact that like she's a black woman on the show isn't like the focus of it.
Mhm.
But there are when Rick and Michonne who got together, a lot of people were excited about it, and a lot of more people though were just like, I don't see that. I don't see him with her. It's weird. Like, he's not fetishizing her because she's black. He like really sees her, and
Yes.
that's what I love about them. I just really value how like the writers just made this character absolutely appreciate this woman for like all that she is outside of being a black woman.
Yes. Yes. And that line between we were just talking about this, that line between fetishization and like attraction is so thin. And it's like there's just a huge difference between like I love this person and they are XYZ race versus I love this person because they are XYZ race. Like, like so and so is so sexy and they're black, or so and so is so sexy because they're black. Like that's such a difference. And yeah, it can get really scary really quickly, I think. Especially, I see it the most with white women and black men, but not all, obviously. I'm just saying that's where I've seen it the most. And I love that you love The Walking Dead and like you're in your little fandom and stuff. And like in the point about characters, having characters of color who are like just as in depth as any other character. Like somebody else had said that in that video I was watching about Latina stereotypes. It's like why does like the Hispanic character in the book need to be named Mari and have a chancla that she throws across the room and she's making cafecito and it's like what? Like she lives in fucking New Jersey. Like she's like a banker. Like, do you know what I mean? It's just like it's weird. Like
Yeah, the
it's yeah.
stereo the stereotypes that they put, especially on like Latina women characters, I'm like, what is happening?
Dude, I get that so much on dating apps. It's not even funny. Like like men will say that like all day long. Like, "Oh, you're Latina? Oh, I know what that means. Like I can't like do wrong by you or like you're going to beat me up or like you're so hot." And I'm like, "What the fuck? Like chill." And my mom, oh my, one time we were going somewhere and I was like, "Oh, do I look okay?" And she was like, "You look like a spicy Latina, so fiery, so spicy." And I was like, "Wait, what the fuck? Like, just say I look good. Like, something about that bothered me so much. Like it's a sexualization, I think, is where it comes. I know is where it comes from. Of like, you are sexualizing me now because you think that I'm this like hot, fiery thing. And where's the room for introverted Latinas? Like, I'm actually introvert. Like, I'm an introvert. And because I'm not bad at public speaking, people don't think that that's true. And it's like, I don't enjoy it. I just do it.
Right.
You
No,
know,
you're
it doesn't leave any room for nuance.
that's this. I would say the same thing for me. I feel like I'm supposed to be loud. Oh, because I've heard that stereotype a lot. It's like black women are loud,
Mm-hmm.
and I am not loud. Um, you know, I
Mm-hmm.
don't like to yell. I don't like to project my voice. I don't like to
Amber.
draw attention to myself. I can be loud when I need.
um, so similar to how like there's the spicy Latina stereotype that I don't really feel like I fit into as someone who's more introverted. Is that something you've experienced as a black woman with like kind of like
Yes.
the loud, angry black woman stereotype?
Oh, yes, absolutely. Especially when I've spoken up against something that didn't feel great or like it was racially charged, then it was like, oh, you're just an angry black woman. Or if I was like, oh no, I don't agree with that, it was like, hold on, watch your attitude, watch your tone. I was like, I'm
Mm,
just disagreeing. And it's a very misunderstood one for me.
yeah,
If I was
it
angry,
makes
I
total
can still have
sense.
that emotion.
Right. And why do I need to why am I unallowed to have the same emotion that white women benefit from emulating emotions, you know, white women tears versus like black and brown women anger, quote unquote. And like even if it's like even if we are angry, like okay, why can't we be angry? It's like there's an attack on our communities and our people. Like and there has been for hundreds of years and we're allowed to be angry about that. We're allowed to show up and be mad and have a tone and like not be perfect in how we do every single thing. And so, you know, like that's kind of where we're going to leave you at today, listeners, before we go into our intentions for the week. But we hope that each and every one of you can learn to be empowered in who you are and in your racial identity to be able to show up in a way that you're not constantly thinking about pleasing other people, whether it be racially motivated or not. Um, so, Amber, what is an intention that you have for the week ahead?
Yeah. My intention is to continue to embrace a soft life. I just want to be soft and mindful, and I want to continue that. So that is my intention. What's your intention going into this week?
I love that. And in a similar vein, the word that keeps coming up for me is like sensual and indulgence. Like I'm really focused right now on like honoring my senses and like treating myself in ways that isn't just like buying shit or like eating junk food, right? So tonight I'm going to a sound healing meditation, which is like my favorite form of self care. So I'm really excited about that. And just my intention is to just also kind of like tap into that soft life energy. And I saw something on the internet that said, like, I don't want to be remembered as a woman who worked herself to death or was always busy. And so that's something I've been thinking about a lot is like, I need to slow down and really focus on my spiritual practices and my forms of self care. And that is resistance. Like staying tapped into our spirituality is resistance. Staying soft is resistance. Staying grounded in our indulgence and in a way that's like not oppressive to other people is resistance. So
Absolutely.
I love that for us, and I love you, and I love you, listeners. And this is I'm Nikki, and that was Amber. And we are co-hosts of the Mixtapes podcast. Please follow us on Instagram and Facebook under the tag the Mixtapes podcast. Listen to us on Spotify and check out our YouTube channel for the Mixtapes podcast. I'm just going to keep saying that until I'm blue in the face. But know that we love you and we're grateful for your support. If there's any topics that you would like us to cover in the show, please leave us a comment. We're more than happy to take your feedback. We've got some cool guests lined up for you in the future, but we are still looking for more guests to join the podcast. So if you or someone you know is either biracial, mixed race, or in an interracial relationship or marriage, or has biracial or mixed race children, please hit us up, as we would love, love, love to have you join the podcast. And more specifically, we're looking for more representation within the LGBTQ community. So our queer couples that are mixed race, please hit us up, and more biracial mixed race people just coming on by themselves to talk about their experience. We're looking for that right now. So peace and love. Do you have anything else to add, Amber?
I think I would also like to open the door or the platform to people who have been transracially adopted. We want to
Yes.
hear your stories too, even if you are
Yeah.
somebody that identifies as one race, but you were adopted by parents or
Mm-hmm.
family of a different race. We want to hear your stories too, because that had a lot of impact on your racial identity as well and how you show up in the world. Our purpose is to provide stories that resonate with others and to just uplift all experiences, specifically with people who are mixed race, interracial relationships, or just people of color. And obviously, people that are part of marginalized communities. We just want to continue to do this important work, and we want to help you find your voice, whatever that looks like. Engage with us, join us.
1000%. Love it. Our solidarity is our superpower. Peace.
Absolutely.